your moderator.
Thank you, Cassandra. And welcome back. We're thrilled to have the candidates for our Carson City Board of Supervisors, Ward 2 here tonight, Maurice White and Stacy Wilkie McCulloch. All right, so let's go over the format again for those of you that might be joining us. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks and then 2 minutes to answer each question. If a rebuttal is requested, it will be for 30 seconds. After we go through the questions, we'll let each candidate have 1 minute for a closing statement. I also want to remind everybody that immediately following this forum, stay tuned while Audrey Rowlett, our Carson City Clerk Recorder, is going to explain the safeguards in place here for your ballot. All right. The questions tonight are from our coalition with input from the public from our email. Let's begin. Each candidate will have an opportunity now to give their opening remarks, and we'll start with you, Mr. White.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity this evening. I offer Carson City a different viewpoint the Board of Supervisors currently does not have. My career as a medium and heavy-duty diesel mechanic in both the private and public sectors required various levels of education, training, and responsibility from entry level to management. Throughout my life, I have worked with many nonprofit and benevolent societies. I have established 2 nonprofit organizations. My professional and private life have allowed me to collaborate with a wide range of people from all walks of life to accomplish the common goals of the group. I have for many years participated in our local government, testifying hundreds of times at the Board of Supervisors and the various boards and commissions, providing my input on projects and helping build the master plans for several departments. During my time on the Carson City Airport Authority, I served 1 term as the treasurer. I have already established a good working relationship with city staff. As your Ward 2 supervisor, my goal will be to enhance our already superior quality of life by responsibly prioritizing the health and safety items that our residents, our businesses, and our visitors expect the local government to provide. My diverse background gives me the experience to ask the questions that are not now being asked. I have the time and the energy to do this job. I am ready to go to work today.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Wilkie McCulloch.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and NGB and TV for doing this forum, especially during a pandemic. It's been real difficult to be able to campaign and get the word out about either one of our candidacies. So my name is Stacy Wilkie McCulloch, and I am running for Supervisor Ward 2. I was born and raised here, graduated Carson High, left here, went to Arizona College for an international marketing degree, traveled the world, came back in 1993 to get married and raise my family here because of the quality of life. I ran for school board in 1999 and won, and served for 4 years on that and the Parks and Rec Commission. During that time, I was working in the casino industry in Reno and Carson City. I finished up my career in the casinos in 2004 with the general managership at the Carson Horseshoe Club. I then went into business with my husband, David McCulloch, and we own a handyman service and window covering business here in Carson City, McCulloch Home Services, and he has a son, Colin, and I have 2 daughters, Athena and Alexandria, and I've just been graced with my brand new grandson. I think these abilities of working on, I was then appointed to the school board in 2009 and have served there for 3 terms. I'm in my 11th year, which I have been able to represent Carson City at different levels on the governor's advisory committee to parent engagement, the NIAA, and had various leadership roles in the Nevada Association of School Board. I think all of these experiences and skills and abilities that I have accustomed to here and developed will be very important in this pandemic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to ask questions, and we will rotate between each of you. So, for example, Mr. White will go first, then Ms. Wilkie McCulloch. Then Ms. McCulloch, you will also the next question go first. So we'll rotate back and forth who's first. So the first question goes to Mr. White. Does Carson City have necessary plans to assure an adequate supply of clean drinking water now and in the future with climate change?
Well, I think as everybody knows, we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million buying water from Minden and then building the infrastructure to get here. So we do have plenty of water at this point for what is projected an 80,000 person population. We have in the last few years put a tremendous amount of work into our water and sewer plants. We have put together a plan through the Utility Finance Committee that has set the rate structures to bring us to a place where when those current facilities need to be refurbished, rebuilt, or replaced, the money will be there. I think, though, we do have some questions in my mind as to decisions that have been made in regards to requiring water rights or not acquiring water rights that have come and gone here in Carson City. While those water rights aren't nearly as significant as the water we purchased from Minden, I think it was pretty short-sighted to let water rights from the Darling Ranch to Silver Saddle Ranch, Buzzy's Ranch, all go sold off to somebody else rather than the city finding a way to retain them for our use here in Carson City.
Mr. White, I was just informed that when you gave your opening statement, the mic was not on.
Okay.
So you can, if you'd like to give your opening statement now, you can, or if you'd rather wait till Ms. McCulloch answers this question, you could do it after that. It's your choice.
Well, let's go ahead and finish
Question.
this question set, and then we'll get back to that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Repeat the question since we have all that.
So the question was, does Carson City have necessary plans to assure an adequate supply of clean drinking water now and in the future with climate change?
I think in the last 10 years that the Board of Supervisors has worked really hard to accumulate as many water rights as they have. And I have been told by department heads that we have plenty in reserves with groundwater and even if with the climate change. I think even Supervisor Bagwell talked about the virtual water rights that they had been working on to make sure that we have that water for the growth that they're projecting at 80,000 people. So I think they've done a good job at that, and I hope that we can keep continuing that.
Thank you. Now, Mr. White, you can do your 2-minute opening statement.
Okay, thank you. Take
Our
two.
Apologies.
No worries. I'm happy to have this opportunity tonight. I offer Carson City a different point of view the Board of Supervisors does not currently have. My career as a medium and heavy-duty diesel mechanic in both the public and private sectors required various levels of education, training, and responsibility from entry level to management. Throughout my life, I have worked with many nonprofit and benevolent societies. I have established 2 nonprofit organizations. My professional and private life has allowed me to collaborate with a wide range of people from all walks of life to accomplish the common goals of the group. I have for many years participated in our local government, testifying hundreds of times at the Board of Supervisors and the various boards and commissions, providing my input on many projects and helping build the master plans for several departments. During my time on the Carson City Airport Authority, I served 1 term as a treasurer. I have already established a good working relationship with city staff. As your Ward 2 supervisor, my main goal will be to enhance our already superior quality of life by responsibly prioritizing the health and safety items that our businesses, our residents, and our visitors expect the local government to provide. My diverse background gives me the experience to ask questions that are not being asked now. I have the time and energy to do this job. I am ready to go to work today.
Thank you. All right, we will move to our second question, which Ms. McCulloch, you will go first on. Do you support a cap on growth for a sustainable future?
I think we are already capping growth by only having 600 housing permits available each year, so that we have time to reach that 80,000 cap out rate. I think sustainable growth will come with the planning that goes along with the areas that we're working with the developers and our open space and our parks and rec. I think we have been very effective in the school district to be one of the most efficient districts in the state with our energy savings programs, our solar panels, our recycling. So I think that those are things that could be worked into the city too. I think we've worked really hard to keep sustainable growth in check, and I don't think that we have to cap it any more than it already is.
Thank you. Mr. White, your turn.
Thank you. Generally, no. Now, I understand that it has to be controlled in a manner that allows our staff to understand how our infrastructure needs can keep up with the growth that is going on. As that growth occurs, substantial property tax increases come with that growth. Down at the Schultz Ranch, for instance, those homes down there are providing somewhere north of $4,000 per each home into new property tax revenue. So I think if we keep an eye on where we're at as far as our infrastructure is concerned, coordinating that with the asset management program that's about to come online very soon, we'll know exactly where we need to be so that we can have controlled growth, not caps, not telling people they can't come here, because, by the way, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Thank you. Mr. White, you will answer this question first. Is the Carson City Health Department doing an adequate job of handling COVID-19?
I believe they are. Over the last several months, when the city instituted their emergency plan and is requiring the Health and Human Services to give a report twice a month on their activities, quite often that is the longest part of the meeting. They are doing an extensive job with providing the safeguards and regulating those things. They are, the way the CARES Act money has been spent seems to be keeping everybody in a good supply of the PPEs that we need. And I believe staff at the Health and Human Services really does understand where they're at and how to implement the standards that have been set down through our state government.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkes-McCulloch, your turn.
I think that the Health and Human Services Department has done an awesome job of working with the pandemic under these unbelievable circumstances. We've worked hand in hand with them with the school district as we reopened our schools, and they have been nothing but fantastic. I think it's really, if you were one of the ones Saturday in line to get tested at the high school parking lot for COVID, you would see them in action. And they're very organized. They know what they're doing. We got the results back. We'll be getting the results back in a timely manner. I think the one thing that I've really been impressed with is their communication with staff, with the supervisors, and with the public. I truly believe that we can trust them with this pandemic, and they are doing the best that they can and have done a wonderful job with this whole pandemic.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie-McCulloch, you will answer the next question first. It's your turn. Should Carson City expand mental health services to reduce the number of persons in jail for mental health issues?
I think the mental health program here has been expanded a little bit for the jail thing by working with the sheriff and his FAST team. Especially during this pandemic, we have seen a lot of mental health issues, and especially with the homeless. I would like to see those programs expanded. We've worked really hard in the school district to use our social workers, the sheriffs, to work on mental health with our children, to the point where we are one of the few districts that hasn't had a suicide completion. And I think that shows that we've done those services well. I think that at the city level, I think it's going to be very important, and if we can expand those services to help these people, that will cut down on costs for the hospital, the sheriff, and other programs, and the prison themselves. So I would like to see those programs expanded.
Thank you. Mr. White, your turn.
Thank you for that question. You know, this has been one of my primary platforms, boosting up the most in the FAST teams. We really have to increase those efforts with the most team that can help divert people from ending up in jail. Then when they do get in jail, the FAST program that connects them with longer term programs to get their feet back on the ground, reconnected with their families, reconnected with their careers. In communication with our sheriff, the problem there is they only have one shift each. So when those folks go home, when they go on vacation, those programs come to a halt. We need to find a way to increase the personnel that are within those programs. Secondarily, our fire department is inundated with calls that are really over in the mental health area. We need to bolster that very small program that they have there, where there's a physician's assistant can be called in to help these folks that really don't need to go to the hospital, really don't need a ride in an ambulance. Carson City currently has about $500,000 a year in unpaid ambulance rides. If we can kick that program on the fire department side up some more, I think we'll find a cost savings in that regard. It's just simply no longer acceptable to work our way through this wash, rinse, recycle situation we're in, because it doesn't help anybody, and secondarily, it costs quite a bit of money to keep doing that.
Thank you. Mr. White, you will answer this one first. What measures would you propose to increase the amount of affordable housing in Carson City?
Well, to be honest with you, I think that pretty much has to lay on the developers. You know, those are the folks that understand where the markets are, and they understand how the properties that they have selected to be developed will fit into the community. I do know that the Board of Supervisors recently approved an affordable housing project over across the street from the corporate yards. I think that's a pretty good move. Anytime the government can clear the pathway for a developer or an operation to help people get off the streets and into stable, clean housing, that's something we need to consider at any time that a project comes forward.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie McCulloch, your turn.
I like to use the term attainable housing instead of affordable, mainly because the market is driven by demand. And here we have a lot of Californians coming over, selling their houses for a very high amount and coming over here with our lower tax structure and our quality of life. So it's hard to keep the prices down because of the market. Also, with the construction with the developers, during this pandemic, construction material has gone up 25% and more, and it's harder to obtain. With the codes that we have, sometimes that adds added cost to our developers too. So no matter how hard they try, it's hard to make it affordable, but we can try and make it attainable. One of the ways to make it attainable is we have over 200 vouchers from the HUD assistance for housing. We just don't have any of that housing available. As Mr. White had told you, there was a housing development project done by the supervisors where that will be helpful because they will be able to use those. I think we're doing as much as we can as a community to make attainable housing, and I hope that we can work with the developers and the community to make it a realization for most residents.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie McCulloch, you will be the first responder to this next question. Carson City's revenues have declined due to COVID-19. Do you agree with the reductions the city has made in response?
There has been a decline in revenue, but our budget that they projected is actually up 9%. So that they've been able to make some of that money usage for other projects, including helping our roads, which we know we need. I think they've done they do what they're supposed to do, as any other department or any other governing board would do in a pandemic, is when you think you're going to have budget cuts like we've done in the school district, you do a hiring freeze, you stop capital projects. And they've done that in the beginning, and now that we've seen that our revenue has actually increased, that they are using these for funds, using them for projects and undoing the freezing and hiring where they're needed now.
Mr. White, your turn.
Thank you. I do agree with the cutbacks that they initially put forth. In fact, I called for even further cutbacks than they agreed to. At this point, I think it is reasonable to reinstate those cutbacks, considering that Carson City's year-end sales tax ended up being 5.2% higher than their original projections. Our July sales tax are actually up 22.8% above our July projections. I believe that again, as I said earlier about the new property tax, all the new housing that is going on here in Carson City is really going to bolster the city revenues. I don't believe that there is going to be a substantial hit to Carson City revenues based on what Carson City is doing. What we have to worry about is the $1.2 billion black hole being created in the governor's budget. That transforms into unfunded pushdowns. We have to be able to make sure that our money is working very effectively, and part of that is figuring out how we can stop cost allocations from gobbling up so much of our money into administrative costs, and make sure that that money actually gets on the ground and put into projects.
Thank you. Mr. White, you will answer this question. Oh, I'm sorry, you just answered this first. Ms. Wilkie.
No, I answered that one first. It's Mr. White's turn.
Oh, it is your turn. Okay.
You were right.
I was right. I was right the first time. All right, Mr. White, here's your question. Carson City does not have enough money for needed street maintenance, and the vote to increase the gas tax failed a couple of years ago. What measures should the city take to adequately maintain its streets?
Well, the city has broken our community up into asphalt districts, and they're working through that in a manner that they have assessed every piece of asphalt and every road in this community to know their maintenance needs. Really, at $4.9 million in the street maintenance budget, and about half of that going to cost allocations, we really need to find a way to get that money on the ground. The only real option that we have for these sort of things is to go looking for grants. That will probably be the avenue to provide the majority of the money that we're going to need. The second thing we need to do is, in 1997, the city signed a contract with the Nevada Department of Transportation requiring the city to do certain things in exchange for building the freeway bypass here in Carson City. So today is not 1997. We're making decisions based on what was going on then. We're making decisions based on best management practice manuals from somewhere else out of an ivory tower. We need to renegotiate that contract with INDOT from 1997 so that we can make decisions based on what Carson City actually needs, and really be able to spend those monies where they should be spent, not on what some contract has told us to do from years ago.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie-McCulloch, your turn.
I think the city has done a great thing by doing the, as Mr. White talked about, the asphalt districts called transportation districts, where the 5 quadrants are working. It's hard. There are no money locally to fund streets. That's always state or federal. As far as grants, we work with a lot of grants in the education world, and there's a lot of strings that come attached with that and a lot of administrative costs and time. So those have to really be looked at to make sure that we are getting what we want and what we need for the price that we can afford and getting what we want in the end. I think one of the things that we've worked really hard on with the board just recently passed the diesel tax, which will help. We have the voters didn't pass that gas tax, and maybe that's something if they decide if the roads really need to be maintained and they're willing to pay for it, going back and looking at that. When we, in the school district, if you look at Washoe, they had a huge capital project problem. They couldn't build new schools. They didn't have the revenue. They couldn't get a bond passed. They got a citizens group together. They worked together with other stakeholders to come together and get another initiative on the ballot. And that ballot measure passed. And that's because the stakeholders took their ownership and knew that these were things that they wanted. They wanted safe classrooms, they wanted clean classrooms, they needed new classrooms. And I think that that can go over to the same thing as we work on the roads. I think we can get citizens groups together and work with stakeholders to see if there is some way that we can work with that. I think that the supervisors have done a great deal with the new developers having to put money away for 5 years so that we can do a Surrey seal. I think these are little options that we have, and I'm looking forward to working on those.
Thank you.
May I have another 30 seconds?
Sure. 30-second rebuttal, sure.
I'd also like to mention that we are beginning to have a tremendous amount of vehicles on our roads that do not participate in the gas tax. We need to find a way to fold those vehicles into participating with providing and maintaining the asphalt that they're using. I know that there's a lot of controversy over the mileage tax study that's going on at the legislature right now. It was mandated from the 2019 session. And I would encourage all of our residents to chime in with the legislature to help us find more ways to fund our asphalt.
Thank you. The next question will go to Ms. Wilkie-McCulloch. You'll be first on this question. What should the city do to increase economic diversity?
I feel that the city has been on that road to increasing economic versatility. Just by doing the downtown project, we've had more restaurants come in, more stores come into downtown. I know they're looking at, we have a lot of manufacturers in town. We may be looking at maybe changing some codes, especially during this pandemic, to make it easier to get some more diverse businesses up. I think most important, though, we need to really work on getting the businesses that we already had that have been affected by this pandemic. Our business alone was affected by a 50% drop in services and income. And the restaurants around here have the same problem. I think we really need to look at that first and foremost, of how we keep the businesses we have and help them to get even bigger and thrive and survive. I think the city can work on increasing after that, looking at diversifying, but I think we've done a pretty good job with that. The only thing we would have to do is maybe change some codes so that we could get like pharmaceuticals in or different kinds of businesses. But I think the city has done a good job at making it easy and making it diversible.
Thank you. Mr. White, your turn.
Thank you. I think most of the keystones for that sort of a project are in place right now. We have the Northern Nevada Development Authority and the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada all working in concert with Carson City to bring in different new employers and to help existing employers expand. One of the things they do there is they work very hard not to bring in competition to existing employers. I believe that there's a few things the city can do to help new businesses that come to town. We have to have a continual conversation with new businesses and consider every single idea that they come forward with. We have to talk about how can they advertise with their signs. Let's talk about upfront costs. Maybe we can defer business license costs until there's a revenue stream coming in. Maybe we can defer some code compliance issues in different buildings until there's an actual revenue stream so these businesses can afford to get into business without just being completely run over with onerous regulations and literally being broke by the time they're actually in business.
Thank you. Mr. White, you'll go first on this question.
Okay.
Do you support measures for a green city?
I think it's responsible for any government to move forward on projects that make economic sense and ecological sense when they are proven projects. I think it's irresponsible for a government to get involved with those kind of situations when they are not proven to be reliable and actually provide success in the projects that they're purporting to do.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie McCulloch, your turn.
I would support measures for being a green city. Like I said, we've worked really hard at the school district to make it one of the most energy efficient and sustainable districts in the state. So I think that it would add jobs, it'd make a better community. We could keep our climate and our environment clean and keep this a place where my grandson will raise his kids.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie McCulloch, you will start the next question. So this is yours. Is the Carson City Sheriff's Department budget adequate or does it need revising?
Is anybody's budget really adequate? Working in the school district, we've never had an adequate budget. We've worked hard with the school district, with the Sheriff's Department. I think that if they are the public service and safety main component along with the fire, and they need to be adequately funded. We've worked really hard to get we now have 5 school resource officers, which are actually deputies and one's actually a supervisor, and they work with the schools and they work with the Sheriff's Department. They've been an invaluable resource in our community. They provide a lot of community services and have worked really hard to build relationships with our students and their family. I think if we have the extra money to put into those 2 budgets, that would be where I'd like to see the money, because you can never have enough safety and welfare for our citizens. The other thing that's real important with the Sheriff's Department, like Mr. White said, is they only have those 2 teams, in the most and the fast, that could help in other ways if they had another team and we could fund those teams. And hopefully with that work that they do, like he said, there would be a cost savings to the city. But I think that no budget is actually adequately funded as much as we'd like it to be, but I think if there's room to help out there, I think that would be one of the places I would look at prioritize for.
Thank you. Mr. White, your turn.
Thank you. Certainly there is some room to enhance the budget over at the Sheriff's Department, as I spoke about the most and the fast team. You know, the city in general has not replaced the pretty large number of employees that were not replaced. In other words, as attrition took place, they failed, or they didn't fail, they chose not to fill those employment slots. 50% of the city's budget. I don't say that as a complaint, just to inform you that that is a high use of our tax dollars. We also really don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we start ignoring our Parks and Rec department again. We have a beautiful park system in this town. There's a few facilities here in town that have been ignored and abused. Roscoe Park is a really good example of where we don't need our Parks Department to get back to as well.
Thank you. Mr. White, you'll answer this question first. Does Carson City have adequate storm drainage resources?
No, we do not. We're working on that. The city has recently put together a storm drain plan. It will address the major highlight points of the issues of continued flooding. Over the past few years, they have done several projects up on Washington Street, over on King Street, and they will continue to struggle with revenues to get these projects done, just like we're struggling with our pavement issues. Not to be derogatory to past administration, because it's been the personality of this community to ignore those issues since we were invented as a city. We spent so much time not taking care of those situations. We're so far behind, it seems like it's going to be an endless struggle. But we have to work on it, we have to be creative, and we have to keep a steady hand on making sure that we pay attention to the health and safety items that really should be provided by our local government.
Thank you. Your turn, Ms. Wilkie McCulloch.
I would agree with Mr. White. They do not have adequate storm drainage. That's what they've been working on, though, and they've come up with a plan. And as he said, they have worked on projects. So it's just, like he said, we've been kicking the can down the road. So it's going to take, just like our water and our sewer rates, they're going to go up because of it to make these plans happen. But in the long run, we will get there. It's just a matter of getting there. And I think that this board has really worked hard to start that movement. And it's going to be tough for us to get on board to keep it going. So I think because there's going to be fee increases and stuff, and nobody likes that, those kind of things. But that's what's necessary to get these projects done. And I think they have a really good plan for how to get it done. And they've worked on a tiered fee schedule, too, that'll be more equitable for most.
Thank you. We have now reached our last question. So, and Ms. Wilkie McCulloch, you will have answer it first. What is your view on the South Carson Street improvement process, or project? What is your view on the South Carson Street improvement project?
As a person who drives down Carson Street at least 7 or 8 times a day because of the work that we do, it's been interesting watching it get done. I can't tell you the words my husband says on the way down there, but anyway. But I think that it was necessary with the project that the improvements that we had already made in the downtown area. I think that it's going to help Carson City when we get to that point. I think the roundabout is an interesting development, but that was one of those things that came with the grant, with the Tiger grant that was put in there. So we had to do what we needed to do for that to get that grant money. I think it's an equitable project because we have put money in the redevelopment areas, and now it was time to get the South Carson improvement stuff done.
Thank you. Mr. White, your turn.
I think the South Carson Street project is illogical. You know, as I stated earlier, we have set a plan to increase the population of this community by 30%, and yet we're making streets smaller. I certainly understand the infrastructure needs. We've talked about that a few times tonight, that our infrastructure needs have been ignored. Again, making decisions based on best management practices out of some ivory tower back east is what has brought this project to Carson City. We need to renegotiate that NDOT contract from 1997 so that we don't end up doing the same thing on William Street from Carson to the freeway. That's the next project in the schedule. When that's finished, the same idea is set to go forward from North Carson Street to the freeway. Are there needs out there? Certainly there's needs out there, but we need to make those decisions locally on what we need for Carson City, not what some complete streets manual is being mandated on us.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the two candidates have agreed to a 1-minute closing statement. All right, well, we'll move to our closing statements. And Mr. White, you'll be allowed to go first.
Okay, thank you. Well, 1 minute, not really enough to say a lot, so you'll notice I have read my opening and closing statements. I want to thank all the people who worked to put this series of events together. I want to thank the viewers who have taken the time this evening to watch this event. I enjoy being able to communicate with the people of Carson City. I wish we could have had more people in the room tonight. I hope you have learned enough tonight for me to have earned your vote. To learn even more about me, you can visit my website at mauriceforward2.com. There you will find a lot more information about how I can help Carson City be the best place to live, work, and play. If you have any questions or ideas, please give me a call at 775-297-6484 or shoot me an email at mauriceforward2@gmail.com.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkie McCulloch, your turn.
Thank you. I too would like to thank everyone that put this together with the League of Women Voters and GB and TV, and for the public for taking an hour, well now 2 hours out of your time to be more educated and learn about the difference between me and my opponent. Serving my community has always been an important part of my life, instilled by my parents. My experience on the Carson City School Board will benefit Carson City, especially recovering from this pandemic. I have learned as board members that we needed to want to work together with constituents and stakeholders to be fiscally responsible. As a small business owner, I know the toll this pandemic has put on our local owned businesses, and I need strong leadership in this community to get back on track. I'm uniquely qualified for this city supervisor position. I have a strong experience in building, maintaining balanced government budgets. I've worked with collective bargaining associations to reach agreements that are good on both sides. I've made tough calls on budget priorities during economic downtimes and even during when there's not. We have a small business owner. I know firsthand the struggles we've had. Also passionate about keeping Carson City a great place to raise a family. For more information, see electstacy.com. Thank you.
We'd like to really thank our candidates tonight, Maurice White and Stacey Wilkie McCulloch, for being here and for running for office. We know it's a challenging task, so thank you. This program will be available on our websites and on the NGBN website for viewing later. So encourage your friends that might not have been able to be here or watching tonight to watch it when they get a chance. Be sure to join us for our next forum tomorrow night, October 13th, for the ballot questions, and on October 16th for the U.S. Representative in Congress District 2 candidates. Don't forget to stay tuned for information on ballot security. And I'll turn it over to Cassandra for our final remarks.
Thank you. We want to thank everybody tonight that was a part of these forums and has been all these 4 nights, all of the candidates, the moderator, and all of the sponsors as well. As our moderator said, remember that all 4 of these nights are available on demand, so you can go back and rewatch. Remember to stay informed, get out there and vote. That's it for us tonight. Make sure you join tomorrow starting at 6 p.m. the ballot questions. I'm Cassandra Butterfield with NGBN. Have a good night.